Rob Zombie backstage in Toronto, and just hanging out here with Fangoria before I wrap up this tour and head out to Salem to shoot Lords of Salem, which will be coming your way sometime in 2012. So keep a lookout. Yeah, Andy and Jason Blum, who did the Paranormal Activity movies, he's the one who came to us looking to do a film, and I pitched him Lords of Salem, which I come up with I came up with that about 5 years ago, and he liked the idea, so we just went into it. I don't know if it will be. That probably will be. I mean, the script is for sure. It's a much different type of movie. It's much darker than the other films. The other films are pretty dark, but this one's more so. And it's not so. I mean, the Halloween films are very physically violent, in-your-face movies. This one's kind of different. It's a little bit slower pace, a little more psychological, a little more supernatural, or a lot more really. But yeah, no, it's a pretty dismal affair. Hope it bums people out big time. Yeah, I mean, I've been on tour now for almost 2 straight years, and we have 10 shows left. I'm going to finish out this run with Slayer, and then I'll go right into production on Lords of Salem. I mean, the effects guys have sort of been working for 6 months already. They're way ahead of the game. But as far as, and I've just started casting a little bit, or haven't cast anybody yet, but I'm just getting into it. So, yeah, I'll go into full pre-production as soon as this wraps up in August, and then we'll be shooting in October. I don't know when we don't have a scheduled release date, probably fall 2012 is most realistic. That's what we're looking at, but nothing's locked in, which is, for once in my life, that's a plus, because on all the last 2 films I've done, they've locked in a completely unrealistic release date, and then you're rushing like a maniac to finish the film. And both times with both Halloween movies, I remember sitting in the premiere, I couldn't even remember what scenes we had cut or not, because they just rushed us through post-production so quickly that you're just confused. So this time we'll really, we'll have the time to really polish it, make it perfect. I mean, I remember buying Fangoria. I don't know if I bought it from issue 1, but I definitely bought it from issue 2. I remember it for sure. I have issue 1, so I guess I bought it at some point. But no, I mean, it was great because, a lot of people always talk about Famous Monsters, and Famous Monsters was great, but that was slightly a little bit, I think people that are a little older than me remember that more fondly. Fangoria was perfectly my time period, so it was the only magazine like it. There's a couple others that came later, but it was pretty rare to find it. I had to go to a lot of trouble to find it sometimes. As I try to remember these things, I think the film that probably struck me the most when I was a kid was King Kong. That seemed to be the one I was most fanatical about. But it was really hard to see films. It wasn't that common, it's hard, but it was always, the typical creature double feature Saturday afternoon on TV thing, which was always showing either the Hammer films or the Universal, the old stuff from the 30s. So those are always the films that were the ones that were important to me back then, because really the other stuff I didn't get to see till later. But I'm talking about late 60s, early 70s, watching that stuff on TV. The classics. And we never had a good horror movie host where I lived, but it would have been the stuff that would have been on all those shows. So, basically, all the classic iconic stuff like Frankenstein, Dracula was always huge, but I think King Kong was always my favorite for some reason. I've always said that, now I'm living it, but I've always said that too. Well, that, heavy metal and hard rock is the same as how horror is treated in the film world. Both, in a nutshell, generate millions and millions of dollars. Most of the time are some of the reasons these companies stay in business, yet they treat it like it's the dirty secret they don't want to know about all the time. The film companies really do it. They'll have certain, horror franchises that are really the only reason that studio exists, or the only way they pay their bills, but they still brush it off, and then they'll spend tons of money on other movies that just tank, and then they have to go back and quickly whip out a whatever, number 6 or something to pay the bills. And it was always sort of the same thing with record labels. It was always most obvious. Award shows are all bullshit anyway, but if you would watch the Grammys, and I think they eliminated the medal award, but every year it'd be like a bunch of records that all sold millions and millions of copies that are huge worldwide, and they would maybe present the award off camera the day before, like nobody cares, but then they'll, present like best spoken word album on camera. That there literally is probably a record that sold like 700 copies. Not even joking, but it's weird. It's very insulting, and a lot of times the people that you work with at the studios or at the record labels are very insulting also. I mean, most of them always end up losing their jobs, and we're still here, so you always end up having the revenge. But it's a very similar situation. I'm sure the same thing with Fangoria too. I'm sure there's a lot of trendy magazines back in the day that get better newsstand placement than they ever did.